Hello booktube, hello book friends. Welcome back to my channel. And as it's Tuesday, another Tag Tuesday video. This is going to be the Big 6-0 book tag, which was a original tag created by Suey at Suey's Book Banter in celebration of her 60th birthday, which is around now. I'm not sure exactly when it is. I was tagged by Pat at Book Chat with Pat, and Suey said of her tag, "I have decided, instead of dreading the big birthday I have coming up this month, I will celebrate it with a series of bookish videos here on the channel. Up first is this original tag, the Big 6-0 book tag, to celebrate 60 years of the love of reading. I hope you all join with me in doing this tag." Well, I'm certainly going to do it, Suey. So there are 6 prompts and a tag other people prompt. So let's get cracking. So prompt number 1, what is a comfort read you'll never outgrow? I think for me, the fact that this was never outgrow, I decided to go for a book that I first read when I was at primary school. So I would have been around about, I don't know, 9 or 10 or something like that. And I've reread it many times since. I normally reread it in the summer, but it is certainly a comfort read. It brings back very kind of pleasant memories. And it is Susan Cooper's Oversea Under Stone. If you don't know, this is the first in the Dark is Rising sequence by Susan Cooper. It's set in Cornwall in the UK. It's set in the summer, and it is basically a family of children who get into let's say some sort of supernatural and mysterious happenings. And if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend it. Question number 2, what is a book that was published in the decade you were born? So I was born in the 70s, and although I didn't read it at the time, Salem's Lot was published in the 70s. Salem's Lot by Stephen King, which, if you don't know, is a very scary vampire novel. Let's put it like that. This is a novel that has given me bad dreams. I've only read it a couple of times, actually. I reread it about 3 years ago, and then I first read it probably in my late teens, I would think. So yeah, Salem's Lot, published in 1975, I think. Well, copyright is 72, but it was first published in 75. So yeah, definitely published in the decade I was born anyway. Number 3, what is a book you would rate 6 stars in a 5-star rating system? I actually struggled to think about this because star ratings for me are kind of although I used 1 to 5 stars, I'm not sure that they reflect necessarily the same way that other people use 1 to 5 stars, but certainly a definite 5-star, going over and above probably 5, was a book I read recently, which was Ted Albury's The Lantern Network. I read this on just when I was looking for books for Dr. November, and I was just blown away. I will link to the review I did in one corner or the other. And yeah, brilliant book. Thoroughly recommend it. It's a spy novel set in the Second World War with operatives of the Special Operations Executive, and it's quite a short read, but it is a brilliant book. What was that? That was 3. Number 4, what is your favourite book from your 6 most read genres? It took me a little bit of time to work out what my 6 most read genres are. So I'm not sure whether this is accurate or not, but it's 6 books from 6 genres, and ones that I read fairly frequently. So I would say that fits more or less the prompt. So starting with military history, I'm going for James Holland's Brothers in Arms. I've mentioned this book on the channel before. This is the story of the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry, which is a tank regiment, mostly a kind of what we would call nowadays kind of territorial army or reserves. And this is the story of their war from landing on the beaches in Normandy in 1944 to the end of the war in 1945, or at least the end of the war in Europe in 1945. They were present during the North African campaign and all sorts, but this is just that kind of snapshot in time. So yeah, this would be one of my 6 for military history. For classics, probably no surprises. The Count of Monte Cristo. This is probably certainly my favourite classic at the moment. I think I've mentioned it, I don't know, at least once a week on the channel this year. It's a book I finished in January this year, so I might have to find something different to talk about in 2026. But yeah, The Count of Monte Cristo, my favourite classic. Favourite natural history book, again, one I've mentioned on the channel before, The Darkness is Light Enough by Chris Ferris, the story of her nocturnal observations of badgers and foxes and wildlife in general near her home, and you know, just a wonderful book written as a diary, and yeah, again, another book I want to reread sooner rather than later, I think. And horror, I'm going for another book I read earlier this year, probably a book that will be in my top 10 of the year, and that is Ghost Story by Peter Straub. I think Peter Straub is probably a forgotten author in some respects, kind of a contemporary of Stephen King. I think writes better than Stephen King, but doesn't get nearly the profile that King gets, possibly because he passed away a few years ago, so he's just not present anymore. And then for crime, I am going for Arthur Conan Doyle's The Hound of the Baskervilles. Don't think this book needs much of an introduction. It's my favourite Sherlock Holmes story, and probably my favourite crime novel of all time. So yeah, Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle. And then favourite spy novel, I would say The Lantern Network, but as I've had that for a previous answer, I'm actually going to go for another favourite spy thriller author, Craig Thomas, and that's The Last Raven. And this book, just if you want a book where peril and suspense is well written, this is one for you. I think I read this a couple of years ago. First time I think I read it, it's one of the Craig Thomases I didn't read when it was first published, but just an outstanding book, and definitely a contender for sort of favourite in the spy fiction genre. What is a book you knew you would love even before you opened it? A book you had a sixth sense about? I'm actually going to repeat. I'm going to go back to Brothers in Arms by James Holland. I think because the reason I knew so much about this book is because I listened to the podcast that James Holland does with the comedian and historian Al Murray. And it's kind of the podcast that kept me sane during COVID and lockdowns. And at the time, all the kind of archives, the historical archives and things were shut. But James Holland was talking about this book because he had basically all the paperwork he needed. You know, he had all the research, he had all the journals and diaries, and you know, the logs from the company itself. So he didn't really need to access the archives to write the book, but he was talking about it a lot on the podcast, so I kind of knew what was coming. I have to say I wasn't disappointed. In fact, if anything, I was kind of even more blown away when I got hold of a copy of the book. So yeah, that's the one I would say, you know, that this is a book that I knew I would love even before I opened it. And I don't think I had necessarily had a sixth sense about it. I just knew a lot about the book before it was published. I think it's certainly a good way to market and sell a book to your audience if you can do it that way. And I don't, you know, without the COVID probably. And then 6, what is a book you would recommend to the next generation of readers? I've really struggled with this one. And I can't, any of the ones that I've just mentioned, I would recommend to the next generation of readers. I would certainly recommend reading the classics. I would say, you know, basically read widely, and also read books that make you feel uncomfortable at times. Don't always just read comfort books. Read books that take you out of your comfort zone, you know, because I think that way you kind of learn a lot. I would say read history books, read books about history, because very often what's happening now has happened before, and ultimately, you know, the solutions to current problems are already there. They're just, you know, in the dim and distant past. So I'm not picking a particular book. I'm just going to kind of give that general advice to the next generation of readers rather than a specific book. And then it's time to tag some other people, which I will do down in the description below. I know Pat, as usual, tagged quite a lot of people, so I will try and pick some people that Pat hasn't already tagged. But yes, so that's the big 6-0 book tag. Thank you, and very happy birthday to Suey for creating the tag, and thank you to Pat for tagging me, and as always, thank you to you guys for watching, and I will speak to you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.